When a string of mysterious murders holds Gotham City in the grip of terror, Batman will need help from Huntress if he hopes to overcome the threat. All this and more in the pages of Detective Comics number 1036. Let's hop on in together and find out what happens next, shall we? Well, now isn't this clever? To get readers up to speed, this issue actually begins with a little newspaper excerpt from Deb Donovan, the crusading journalist who isn't exactly a big fan of Batman but doesn't necessarily trust Mayor Nakano or Mr. Worth either. You'll recall that connected construction tycoon Worth's daughter, Sarah Worth, had been murdered. Worth's daughter also just so happens to be a neighbor of Bruce Wayne. At the end of the previous issue, Bruce had actually thought he had seen Sarah back to life as some sort of twisted zombie creature. In reality, though, it was Clayface. Well, one of the Clayfaces. Batman can't exactly be sure which one because there are so many running around, don't you know? One of the major sticking points of this arc is that Bruce is still getting used to living in a neighborhood and having to live around other people. Case in point, when he carries the body of this clay person into his house, Lydia, one of the nosy neighbors, thinks that he's carrying a body and calls the police on him. And hey, even though Bruce isn't rich anymore, he's just rich enough that the cops don't break down his door right away, giving him enough time to concoct some sort of cockamamie story involving new sound systems and horror movies. Now, this murder mystery just continues to thicken. Sarah Worth is actually one of many young women who have shown up dead in the last little while across Gotham City. Bruce at first thought it was the work of some sort of serial killer. Then, giving Mr. Worth's own criminal connections, Batman assumed that this may have been some manner of gangland slang, but now that we have this new Clayface on the scene, Bruce thinks he may finally be able to decipher some real clues. Batman's not the only one working this case, though, as he discovers after getting accosted by a Huntress, who we've seen in little Easter egg appearances within these main Detective Comics stories, as well as featuring in the backups. Helena is understandably a little suspicious, what with Batman skulking atop the roof with what looks to be a corpse in a bag. The Clayface in the bag ends up getting loose, and Batman and Huntress are forced to give chase. Eventually, they do discover that this is indeed Lady Clayface, an offshoot of the original. She's confused and scared and just lashing out at everything around her. Batman desperately wants to get to the bottom of why exactly she took the form of Sarah Worth of all the people in the world. When Lady Clayface eventually calms down, our two heroes do ultimately get some answers. It seems that Lady Clayface was serving time in Arkham Asylum right before the A-Day chemical attacks. Which, man, credit where credit is due. They are referencing this thing that happened in Infinite Frontier issue number 0 a lot across a bunch of different DC books, so fair due to them. The gas attacks seem to have some sort of negative effect on Lady Clayface's rather unique physiology. She was able to escape into the sewers, but was there for a long time, slowly losing her mind. This means that she just so happens to be the only witness for Sarah Worth's murder. She was even able to glean a name from the woman's attack, and that name is Neil, of course belonging to her husband. A husband who was already acting suspicious before in his last dealing with Batman, and who also just so happens to work for the anti-vigilante Mayor Nakano. Speaking of Nakano, he's getting absolutely reamed out by Mr. Worth right now, who is even more upset than normal following the death of his daughter now that he knows people like the Penguin are attempting to move in on his territory. Nakano is slowly but surely learning that the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend, and I find it very ironic that a man who started out as a cop before he became a politician is now getting pushed around by a big criminal. Now, Batman had been following Neil via his cell phone for a while now. After all, when a woman is murdered, there's a good chance it's her spouse who did it. Batman and Huntress are able to track Neil's location, and it seems that he's already dead in a very strange position, and no real evidence to say how he was murdered, only that he has fresh blood on his hands. And that's because before Batman and Huntress had gotten here, Neil had returned home and murdered Lydia, the woman who called the police on Batman. Her body ends up getting discovered in the street by Deb Donovan, bringing this whole story full circle. Man, at this rate, it looks like Batman won't have to live with that many neighbors after all. And so that was Detective Comics issue number 1036, everybody, and overall, I continue to enjoy what Tamaki is laying down here. It's a fun mystery with many different layers that show us many different sides of Gotham City, from the underworld to the news media. I like that Huntress gets to tag along in this story and be the Watson to Batman's Sherlock. In fact, it gives you more incentive to actually go back and read the backup stories if you're not, because they're actually connected here. I like the use of Lady Clayface, a character we haven't seen for a long time, and I like that Tamaki references the last time Batman saw the original Clayface and that they were actually on good terms back then. Overall, I think I'd feel comfortable giving this one an 8 out of 10. Real positive stuff, and I can't wait to see where this mystery goes and builds from here.
Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quest. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.